Hello, welcome or welcome back if you're a repeat viewer to Mark's NOTCAST. It is Sunday, 18th of February 2024. Today I am going to be talking about Morrissey's third solo LP. It is a work of deathless genius. Its name is Kill Uncle. I refer to the work of deathless genius primarily because that's what Select magazine called it way back when in the 1990s. I suspect they were being slightly mocking. It's not his best solo LP, it's fair to say, but I'm going to talk through that period, the tour, and everything that goes with it. If you're a repeat viewer, you will already know that about once or twice a week I talk about something that I love, loathe, like, or am somewhat ambivalent about, and my opinion and relationship next to that, because what the world needs more of is obviously bold alcoholic 50-something record collectors. Well, guilty as charged, Your Honour. There you go. So, released on the 25th of February 1991, Kill Uncle is turning a staggering 33 years old this week, and I'm pretty surprised by that, really, because it feels to me still very, very fresh in my mind, although obviously I'm not perhaps quite as fresh as I once was. And the passing of time and all its numerous crimes is a thing that sometimes it kind of blurs memory, and it makes you think, oh, things are a little bit different now to the way they were. But I try to preserve my memories of the time and be honest about those. So, for example, I really, really love Morrissey in this period. My relationship to him has changed over time, like lots of people's has. Some people have got closer, and some have got further away from him. It's just the natural way in which any kind of relationship to any artist exists. If you love an artist from day one, sometimes that artist will go in a slightly different direction and you won't. So through this period there are lots and lots of releases that come out through this period, and I have to discount that one because you shouldn't be seeing it. There was obviously the single, the album, the live recordings. This was Morrissey's first solo tour in 1991, and there was a lot of live recordings that went out about it as well. There was books, badges, posters, stickers and t-shirts. There was lots of stuff that went on in this period of time. Maybe I should do a thing where I do that with my arms and go, who knows? Sometimes I do that and sometimes I don't. So let's get dug straight in, shall we, without any word from our sponsor, because my sponsor is a cat. Kill Uncle, the third Morrissey solo LP, is actually the second solo LP, because Bone and Drag, the second LP, shouldn't really be an LP as such. Bone and Drag is an album which was kind of hived off into 7-inch A's and B-sides by mistake. Whereas Kill Uncle kind of feels like it's a compilation of 7-inch A's and B-sides that have been turned into an album by mistake, if that makes sense. There's a little distinction in that. Some of the material on Kill Uncle isn't particularly great, and that sounds a little bit bitchy when I say it, but it isn't. And side 2 has a real massive dip off, primarily because I think of the fact that as it was the third Morrissey solo LP, it was the third one with a different set of writers. So, for example, Fever Hate had Stephen Street, Bone and Drag had Stephen Street, Mark Nevin, and Kevin Armstrong, who was also in David Bowie's Tin Machine at the same time, and also played on things like Absolute Beginners. And Kill Uncle featured Mark Nevin, who had previously played guitar and written in Fairground Attraction, so had that sense of a kind of rockabilly, traditional kind of, played with brushes type of sound, which I think Morrissey was hoping for this record. But what we did have right from the off is the writing styles were different. So Mark would work up not a complete song, but he'd work up an instrumental demo, send it over to Morrissey, and Morrissey would go, great, I'm going to sing over the top of it. Whereas I think Mark was used to a more input from the singers to go, what if you put that bit there, what if you put that bit there, and maybe we could change this bit. Whereas he was actually listening to songs which perhaps didn't necessarily feel 100% fully finished and formed. Which, when you listen to Kill Uncle as an album, I can kind of get the impression that maybe that was that some of the songs on here musically just aren't as strong as some of the other ones. The melodies aren't as strong, the riffs aren't as strong, they're not as memorable, they're not as immediate, and the structure of the song, so for example the verse, chorus, middle eight, break, ending is perhaps not as clearly defined on some of the material on this as perhaps it would be from some of the material from other songwriters, and that's possibly down to a slight mismatch of communication. It's possibly down to a number of other things, and one of which is maybe Mark Nevin wasn't feeling enormously inspired at the time. Maybe Morrissey wasn't enormously inspired at the time either. As Morrissey himself said in 1994 about Kill Uncle, he said, "It's substandard, a great shock to me to actually make a few records I didn't think were exceptional." Or, as he says in Autobiography, which is a terrifying read, I say terrifying for a particular reason, which I might expand upon in future episodes. He says, "The rinky-dink kinks sound spurting from the pale and pasty Kill Uncle sessions. Recording something for the sake of recording delivered Kill Uncle unto the world, and I'm finally up against the limits of my abilities, while surely not fooling anybody. Having been so right, it is suddenly shocking to be so wrong." Yet, Kill Uncle made it to number 8 in England and number 52 in the US. And it's important to put a context around this album in terms of history. So you think about bands that were coming out from Manchester or were coming from Manchester at that time. You had obviously Bernard Sumner and Johnny Marr. Johnny Marr being obviously Morris's former writing partner with Electronic, that were doing great guns with their debut album that was released in May 1991. Happy Mondays had just released Pills, Thrills and Bellyaches. The Stone Roses were still cruising on the crest of the wave that was their debut album, and the singles Fool's Gold and One Love. For the first time, Morrissey looked like part of Manchester's history and not part of Manchester's future. And that was a strange place to be. At the same point, Morrissey's touch points in terms of his artistic output, his references, his visuals, seemed to be far more clearly defined towards things from history. So whereas obviously he was thinking about, for example, Saturday Night, Sunday Morning, 60s movies, Alain Delon, a kind of history which he'd never got to experience as a child, those just suddenly seemed archaic. It would be like if an artist came out now and was like nostalgic for, I don't know, Magnum PI and early episodes of ER or The Green Wing or something. And you kind of just go, you're not really the sound of the future here, are you? And musically, the world had moved on from your standard guitar, drums and bass format. The world had moved into more kind of like electronics and electronica, bands like, the New Order and Depeche Mode and all those, even though they were fairly old, were kind of deep inside electronics and sequencers, something which Morrissey stayed away from until about 2004. So for the first time, it sounded like a little bit the rise or fall of the old guard. And as I've said, with this album, although it took its title from a 1966 film called Let's Kill Uncle, and from an unreleased song, which is where Morrissey posits murdering a rich uncle who had lots and lots of money for the inheritance. And you kind of go, these are very archaic concepts. To quote the Smiths, it says nothing to me about my life. And so some of these songs are not necessarily songs which the audience would necessarily kind of attach to, or would feel a huge amount of kinship to. You think about songs like Mute Witness, for example. I have never been mugged nor side Clapham Common at 4 a.m. So whilst I love the song, it's difficult for me to connect to it. Whilst I've never had a boyfriend who's only had one knee, for example, or I've never got Churchillian legs. Again, these are things where you kind of think they're third-party character pieces looking at other individuals as opposed to talking about one's own experiences and how to connect to those. So there was, even though the live shows were phenomenally good, and parts of Kill Uncle are very, very good, this was the first time where I think the Morrissey audience had started to drift ever so slightly from him, which he kind of then recovered by playing live and revitalising people. If he hadn't toured this record, I think it would have been difficult to maintain a degree of currency, especially in a post-Nirvana environment. So it was a transitional period for Morrissey, and it was a transitional period in a number of ways. So for the personnel who were on the album, he added, he retained Andrew Parisi on drums and percussion from Viva Hate. Mark Nevin came in on guitars. Bedders, I think, was in Madness, came in on bass, and obviously the co-writing with I think was it Mark Nevin on this as well. So it was like a third album made with a third set of musicians in 4 years, with no live shows. It was the sound of somebody who was pretty much at a crossroads. It was recorded in Hook End Studios in autumn 1990. And the sound was deliberately moving away from guitars. That was Mark Nevin's idea, is to move away from guitars and to turn things like pianos and strings and things into what previously would have been the guitar roles. So a song like Frank, for example, a song like Sing Your Life, the guitar is very understated. It doesn't take a lead melodic approach at all. It's all things like strings and keys and violins and stuff like that really lead those. And there's an influence from Sparks on Mute Witness. And there's an influence of Madness. So, for example, Langer and Winstanley, who did the production of it, who also produced Absolute Beginners and some of the Madness material, working with Mark Nevin and Kevin Armstrong. And that meant that actually the trio that had worked on Bowie's Absolute Beginners were starting something from a slightly different angle and seeing if they could perhaps conjure magic a second time, or as Iron Maiden sang, lightning strikes twice. Could it happen? No, it didn't. And the move to pull back from guitarists to other instruments was a deliberate attempt to kind of move away from the sound of the Smiths and to create Morrissey as a more independent artist who, whilst he had a shared history with the Smiths, wasn't just a guitar guy. It didn't really work. Langer's view is that the songs weren't really strong enough, and it was more like poems set to music as opposed to songs, which was pretty harsh. But we are where we are. And so the first release from the album was perhaps fair to say underperforming in people's expectations. Our Frank, here's the 12-inch, here's the UK CD of it. Our Frank is actually, I think, a really good song. It's a song that is underrated in the Morrissey canon, and it's also a song that I think has not had enough love from people. It's got a hilarious lyric, and you might not think that necessarily, but for example, the first time that they recorded it, when Mark Nevin was playing guitar, and it was the first song recorded for the LP, and then Morrissey comes out and sings the chorus, is "Give us a drink and make it quick, or else I'm going to be sick all over your frankly vulgar red pullover." And Mark Nevin was crying with fits of laughter when he first heard that, when he was playing it. And it's a fabulous song, because people think, oh, Morrissey, heaven knows he's miserable now, he's such a miserable, glum old person. And it's like, you can't write a lyric like that without having a dry and wonderful sense of humour that's able to point out the absurdity in various things. It's also, I think, a song where you might think about, well, what is Our Frank about? Well, it opens, doesn't it? Our Frank can open deep conversations. They get me nowhere, they bring me down. So give it a rest, won't you? And it's about the idea sometimes it's actually humans just need to relax. They need to have fun. They need to Panic at the Disco. They need to do all these things. And actually, it's probably the nearest thing that Morrissey's ever come to something like Girls, Girls, Girls by Motley Crue, by effectively saying, I want to go out, I want to have a fag and a drink and have a good time, and I don't want to talk about the meaning of life. Which, coming from somebody who has so clearly allied himself to people that think so very deeply about the complications of life, is quite a surprising U-turn, but also a welcome and refreshing change. Think about Morrissey's worldview that he has depicted in these songs and in these albums, and the other stuff that he's done. He is very much not necessarily a perpetual teenager, but when you're younger and a teenager, and I was 18 when, actually I was 17 when Kill Uncle was released. When you're 17 or 18, certainly there's a huge element of questioning, well, who am I? Who am I going to be? What am I going to do with my life? Am I going to love? Am I going to not love? Where am I going to sit economically? What am I going to do with my life, as Echo and the Bunnymen had it? And to then question that, and then you kind of go, well, actually, if you're endlessly just asking questions, you do need also to be open to answers. And part of that would be, give me a drink and make it quick, and God, give me a cigarette and patience, just no more conversations. And the world may be ending, but look, I'm only human. I really rate that, Frank. I think it's a great song. I'm glad it's back in his set list, although I haven't seen him live for a number of years. I really, really enjoy it. I think it's very underrated. It should have got to higher than number 26. But the problem was, who else was around at the time? What was happening in 1991? Happy Mondays, Stone Roses, The Farm. For God's sake, they're not a great band. You know, people like Jesus Jones, who were working in a very different environment. EMF, Pop Will Eat Itself. Ned's Atomic Dustbin, in a very, very different musical environment And Morrissey sounded old. I mean, I know he always sounded old, even from the first single. He sounded like the world's oldest teenager. But it was an element of going, well, if you're just asking questions and you're not interested in answers, what is the point, really? So our Frank, I think, should have done better than number 26 in the charts. There are two B-sides on this, Journalists Who Lie and Tony the Pony. And I just want to check the writing credits on here. So Journalists Who Lie, oh, that's our Frank, so I know who wrote that. Journalists Who Lie is written by Stephen Street. That's one of the very last ones with him. And then Tony the Pony with Mark Nevin. Journalists Who Lie is, if you're a fan of a musician, I'm always very wary of songs about newspapers and journalists, because you end up going, really? You're a man with a bullhorn yelling about the fact you've had unpleasant news articles written about you. There's that atrociously immature section of Guns N' Roses' Get in the Ring, where Axl childlessly names music critics and then goes, oh, are you fed up because your daddy's getting more pussy than you? Ooh. And I'm just kind of sat there going, look, mate, I'm like 17 and I'm on minimum wage and I really don't care about how a press article hurt your feelings, man. You know? Same thing with Journalists Who Lie. Not vastly interested in whether a press article pissed Morrissey off, to be honest. True or not, and there is obviously a responsibility to at least be accurate to the truthiness of the situation, but not everyone needs to hear it. I mean, after all, that's what lawyers are for, right? If it's untrue. Second track, and this is on the CD single of the 12, which is Tony the Pony, written with Mark Nevin, which was inexplicably added to the American pressings of Kill Uncle to make the album more than its frankly Spartan 33 minutes down to a whopping 37 minutes. Is Tony the Pony any good? Not really. But the demo was, I think, again, not fully formed, really. It was quite familiar, I think, Tony the Pony. It wasn't a song that was vastly radical in any way. I think the bass line was recycled for Pregnant for the Last Time. And it was added to the US Kill Uncle without Morris's permission or okay. So obviously there will have been a letter from a lawyer about that. Let's go into the album, because I've mentioned our Frank. Let's kill Uncle, kids. He's got the money. So Kill Uncle. This is the Spanish version of the album. Comes in a gatefold with perhaps the worst picture of Morrissey that's made it to the front of a Morrissey album. Or a Morrissey studio album anyway, let's put it that way, because the worst picture on the front of any Morrissey record is this picture. Sorry. We're back in the ring. So the worst picture on the front of any Morrissey release, I'm afraid to say, is this photo on the cover of the very best of Morrissey, which features Morrissey dangling his feet out of a bath. Don't need to see that, frankly, and I don't think it's particularly iconic at all. This is probably the least good cover picture on the cover of any of the Morrissey solo LPs. A fact that's actually reflected in his book Peepolism, where he mentions, I think that there's another cover which was used for the adverts for the album, actually, which I think is far, far better. Let me just quickly get to the press advert in question that I'm talking about. This one here, the one for Kill Uncle there. That would make a better cover for the album, Art Suffer England Hatred. Morrissey with a football, that would have been a much better cover, but sadly they didn't use it. Instead, we've got Morrissey expansively kind of doing some hand gesture. I don't know what exactly, but there we are. Let's Kill Uncle, kids. Not the best LP cover. Second track then is Asian Rut. Poorly sequenced. The album, I will be really blunt about it. Kill Uncle is poorly sequenced, and Asian Rut, the second song, the demo was called Idiot's Funeral, is just completely sucks all the life out of the LP with this slow, maudlin, almost side-ending track. Really, I would put this to the end of side one. And whilst it's a condemnation of violence and racism, and it's very sympathetic to that, it follows on from some of the themes that appeared in Bengalian Platforms, some of the themes that turn up later on in National Front Disco, not in a judgmental way, but in a perhaps slightly clod-hoppy, blunt, hammer to crack a walnut kind of approach to the lyric. And it's not a great lyric. It really should be rewritten, I think it's fair to say. Obviously, it kind of addresses the element of racism and xenophobia that sits in parts of British culture and obviously have become louder and more obvious over time. I'm not a fan of the current government or its extradition plans for Rwanda, which puts us in the strange position. Whereas if you are actually a refugee from Rwanda and you come to the UK and you claim asylum and have been successful, which has happened, you could actually be the only person from Rwanda to claim asylum, and then the government going, well, actually we're going to put immigrants into Rwanda, even though if you tried to become a refugee from Rwanda, we've regarded Rwanda to be unsafe, and therefore you'd be okay to plead asylum from there. I kind of go, yeah, not clever, guys, you haven't thought this one through. But, you know, since when has thinking things through and being clever been a sign of British politicians? We've certainly had a couple of bad ones over the years. Asian Rut then, not a great song, fair to say. Worked well live, but I don't like it, right? Third one is Sing Your Life. Now this, Sing Your Life, stone dead, absolute classic. Second single released from the album. Here is the CD single. And again, this is backed with a couple of fantastic tracks, but since they're not on the album, I'll have to do them at the end of the album. Sing Your Life is one of my favourite Morrissey songs. I think it's a solid gold 5 out of 5 classic. What a brilliant song it really is. Although perhaps some people think a little less of Sing Your Life than I do, other people are wrong and I am right. It is, to me, the first rockabilly style song that Morrissey really released. It was the video for this saw the first appearances of who would become the key parts of his live band. So I think the video features Alan White, Spencer Cobrin, Gary Day, and then Mark Nevin on guitar. Mark was asked to join Morris's touring band but wasn't able to do it because of prior commitments. So we then got a fabulous guitarist called Boz Bora, who has also worked with Adam Ant and I think Kirsty MacColl as well, who joined the band. And effectively, Sing Your Life is one of the finest songs which of this period, undoubtedly a classic, 5 out of 5. It takes a little bit of a cue from a Billy Fury B-side from 1962, I think, which is called I Belong to the World. And the lyric is, life wasn't meant to be lived, it was meant to be sung. And then the lyric itself for Sing Your Life is just gorgeously wonderful about the idea of, remember, because everyone who's in a band, everyone who sings in a band, almost everybody that does that, because the financial rewards compared to the risks that you take in being in a band are not great. You do it because you love it. You do it because the music means something to you, and you do it because you too were once a fan of bands, and bands meant the world to you. And some book called Our Band Could Be Your Life. The idea of going, sing your life. Any fool could think up words that rhyme. Many others do. Why don't you? Walk right up to the microphone and name the things that you love and the things that you loathe. And then the idea of going, you have a lovely singing voice, and all of those who sing on key, they stole the notion from you and me. The idea being actually a singer sometimes is just an avatar for the audience, and people like bands and they like musicians because they receive parts of themselves in that. And then people start to project onto the singers their own ideals, their own concepts. And then there's a sense of betrayal sometimes when the singer does something. And then you kind of go, okay, well, that's one way of looking at it. But you shouldn't you need to be careful who you pin your idolism to, because sometimes they are feet of clay and they let you down. Which, of course, when I get to talking about later periods of Morrissey's career, I see a divergence between myself and him, and the relationship between me and him changes. Not that he has the slightest bloody clue that is what happens. Sing Your Life is a classic. Only got to number 33 in the UK charts, which frankly is undeserving. The lowest charting single from this period. I think it's a fabulous song, and it worked very, very well live, actually. Very well, and I wish it was played more often. But as Morrissey said in the book, he was at the limits of his ability with some of the stuff that was on Kill Uncle. Probably doesn't look back on that period as being particularly successful. Only one song from the album, I think, survives after the end of the Kill Uncle tour, and that's Our Frank, which took until, I think, 2022 to come back into the set lists. So it's not regarded by Morrissey as perhaps his finest hour, it's fair to say, and not regarded by anybody else, actually, even though it is a work of deathless genius. Song 4 is Mute Witness. again, I absolutely love Mute Witness. It's a great song. As a strange and unusual lyric, the idea about somebody that couldn't articulate a crime that they'd seen, and then this line about 4 a.m. Northside, Clapham Common, who knows what she was doing there. Clapham Common, at least way back when in the 90s, was well known as a place for men to meet other men to have sex, sometimes in public. Cottaging, amongst other things, although cottaging involves the use of a male public toilet. I had a chap expose himself to me in a toilet once, which I wasn't expecting, and I certainly wasn't in the mood for, because I just wanted to go for a wee, to be honest. That was a very long time ago, about 25 years ago now. And Mute Witness kind of talks a little bit about the romance of crime. It talks a little bit around, you know, the outsider and people that feel like they don't necessarily belong in society, hence going to a place that's well known for what could be regarded by some people as deviant sexual practices, especially if you write for a dog shit Sunday tabloid newspaper, and then also around the revisiting some of the themes that came out in November Spawned the Monster, the idea that people who perhaps aren't fully abled are worthy of and deserving of love and respect and being treated equally in a society that sees them as lesser. Often when people have disabilities, society sees them as stupid, which is not the case at all. They just aren't necessarily able to control their bodies in a way in which other people can, for example. Or as I memorably heard once, it was like, I'm disabled, not stupid, which was very, very important to the person, but I think they hadn't quite grasped it because they were kind of patronising to the person in question. I think Mute Witness is a banger of a song, musically heavily influenced by Sparks, absolutely rollicks along at a great speed, and great live. Again, not played live for a long time, probably should be. We have King Lear, last track on side one. It's a whimsical situation comedy. It is light, fluffy, insubstantial. It's fun live. It's got some awful and brilliant lyrics at the same point. Ones like your boyfriend, he went down on one knee. Well, could it be he's only got one knee? It's okay, but it's not. I listen to King Lear and I'm going, what are you trying to communicate here? What's the message? Is that the person in question has got a boyfriend and their boyfriend's a bit of a shitbag? There's a lot of songs about that. And as I saw on a memorable tweet recently, never X, always tweet, doesn't matter what Elon thinks, he is not king of the world, is that a lot of the songs from the 80s and the 90s are about how men have difficulty talking about their feelings, which actually is a great number of genres, come to think of it. And pretty much all of the genres I like is about men having difficulty talking about their feelings. Boys Don't Cry, for example. Let's flip over the LP to side 2. Right, here's where I'm going to pretend. Woof. Side 2. Haha, not very exciting, is it? But this is a visual representation of an original LP. And side 2 opens with Found. This is the first of the songs that, were I God, I would delete out of my track listing of the LP. It's not good. The instruction from Morrissey was, write me a punk song, because he was like, well, the songs on the album so far, they're a little dry, they're a little staid, they run at roughly the same kind of speeds. He wanted something that was a bit heavier. And Found is a very quick, very fast song, in so much as it was written very, very quickly. It probably took 1 minute 58 seconds to write, and that's exactly the length of the song. There are rumours that it was about Michael Stipe. I don't think that was the case. The idea of someone who's worth it in the murkiness, who's never seeming scheming, but if I never found somebody who wants to be with me all the time, is part of that. The idea of having found somebody in this madness amongst the billions of people on the planet, there's somebody that you could comfortably do nothing with, is one of the key barometers, I think, of any relationship. And with this, it has parallels to Noel Coward's If Love Were All. It's not a bad lyric, but it is a bad song. Never played live. I would put it on a B-side. And then we have Driving Your Girlfriend Home, track 7. Again, we're only about 25 minutes into the album, so we're really racing through it, because on 3 minutes time, this episode will be longer than the album, which is a shocker. And we have Driving Your Girlfriend Home, which revisits the revisits the romance that's kind of alluded to in there as a light that never goes out. Possibly about an unusual relationship. The idea that perhaps it goes, I'm driving your girlfriend home and she's saying how she never chose you. Turn left, she said, and so I turned left, and how did I end up so very deeply involved in the very existence I planned on avoiding? It's a lyric that's aged better over time. At the time I was listening to it, it's like, well, it's about a guy in a car driving a woman home, and maybe he likes the man in question, and maybe he likes her, and they are at a point or an impasse where it's like, and then you end up going, well, actually, if you make the move, you end up like that weird, creepy guy in Love Actually that has the stereo and the signs, that sits outside and answers and knocks the door and plays a song to his mate's wife, and you kind of go, that ain't right. Is one side of it. The other side of it could be, I really like him and she doesn't appreciate you, and maybe you should be with me. Again, all songs about how men have difficulty talking about their feelings, I suspect. It's also musically relatively insubstantial. There's not much in the way of a strong melody around the chorus or the verse. It's a relatively limited set of chord structures. It's okay, not great. Seen it played live. Not vastly memorable, truth be told, at all. Harsh Truth of the Camera Eye, track 8, awful. Hate it, hate it, hate it. It's long, it's epic, it's trying to do the kind of how soon is now thing, but it covers nothing with much. It tries to cover up the emptiness of the core part of the melody and the song with production tricks, screams, shattering glass, those type of things. And the lyrics are basically about either topless models or porn. And I'm kind of going, nah, rubbish. 12-inch B-side at best. And then there's 2 fabulous tracks to end the album. So basically you've worked out the 3 songs I'd take off the album, by the way, are probably King Lear, Found, and The Harsh Truth of the Camera Eye, which takes the actual LP down to 24 minutes. But there are 4 other songs amongst the B-sides and the associated singles that will propel this to a much better position. And we're going to get to those pretty soon, pop pickers. We still have I'm the End of the Family Line, which is the penultimate song on the album. I love it. I think it's great. It has a very determined lyric about how one should not be in a relationship if you don't want to be in a relationship, and you shouldn't have children if you don't want to have children. The assumption is, especially when people say things like, when are you going to make me a grandmother? And it's like, no, when are you going to make me a sister? Those type of questions. And it's like, well, it's not up to me to do what you want to do. It's up to me to live the life I've got to live, right? And I'm the End of the Family Line has these wonderfully harsh lyrics about, the family tree hacked into decline, and I'm spared the pain of ever saying goodbye. It's also got, by the way, a fabulous lyric about until I arrive with incredible style, which I do use occasionally when I arrive with incredible style anywhere for any reason. Only people that have know an obscure Morrissey 33-year-old LP track would care, even less would notice, I suspect. And then the last one, There Is a Place in Hell for Me and My Friends. The version on here is the original studio demo with Morrissey vocals. It's this gentle, delicate piano, the sound of traffic outside. An air that was never really captured again in the subsequent studio recordings. And a song about, well, there is a place in hell for me and my friends, where no matter what happens, because of the sins that we've been ascribed by the society and the world, is that we all belong. That sense of having a collection of heroic, ambitious outsiders which have become part of your own gang, and obviously friends of the family that you choose. And so that's where the hell for me and my friends, the family that I have chosen together, that have chosen to do things that society itself might not necessarily approve of. That is Kill Uncle. It's not a great LP at all. 7 really good songs and 3 really bad songs. But you can make it a decent 11 tracker by adding a couple of extra songs into that, which I will get to, starting with the Sing Your Life single, which was released in April 1991. This was backed with 2 specific B-sides. One of those B-sides, oh, I can't find my 7-inch of it at the moment. One of those B-sides is That's Entertainment, a cover of The Jam, which appeared on the B-side of the Cosmic Dancer single, as well as on the Sing Your Life single. Sing Your Life, this is one of the best Morrissey CD singles that there is. Full stop, no discussion, no debate. One of the best. It has a cover version of The Jam's That's Entertainment, a cover version that Morrissey doesn't especially like, but I like, which actually does something original and unusual with the song. It takes what feels like a celebratory kind of kiss-off into a desolate 4 a.m. who loves you when everyone else has left kind of approach. And then also the next track on there is The Loop. The Loop is as locked in, stone dead, absolute Morrissey classic. I wish it was on the LP. It's one of the best songs from the era. It's got this rollicking, rolling, wonderful rockabilly sound to it. It's got bass from Johnny Bridgewood making his first appearance, second guitar from Boz Bora, drums by Andrew Parisi, harmonica from Alan White across the various recordings. So it's all coming together, and it's just a absolutely fantastic track. I really, really love The Loop. And if it wasn't finished in time for the LP, what a shame, because it should have been on the album. It's a guitar instrumental with minimal lyrics. It's got one verse that's repeated twice. And it's got this lovely lyric about, if you're ever bored, give me a call that you might not get through. But I just wanted to say I've never been away. I'm still right here where I always was. It's called The Loop because the demo was called The Loop, because it was based upon a drum pattern that was looped. It's been a live staple. It's been played very, very recently live. It's the only song from the Kill Uncle era that's been regularly played throughout Morrissey's career. The Loop is fabulous. I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend it. I would put it track 4 on the LP after Pregnant for the Last Time. And Pregnant for the Last Time is the next single, which was released in July 1991. Here is a 12-inch single, by the way, of Pregnant for the Last Time. Here is a promotional 7-inch. Oh, look at those colours, isn't that nice? And then also we have the CD single of Pregnant for the Last Time here. This, by the way, is a photo shoot that was also used for the cover of You're Gonna Need Somebody on Your Side single, which came out in about 2012 or 11 or thereabouts, I think. And Pregnant for the Last Time is backed with a cover of Skinstorm by Bradford and 2 live songs, which means we're going to talk about the tour. But Pregnant for the Last Time is, in my opinion, a great little song. It's a little flippant, it's a little sly, it's a little fast. It's not entirely 100% serious. It's got, I think, bass by... I think Johnny Bridgewood plays bass on it, actually. I could be wrong, although it's not necessarily credited. The live musicians are credited on here. And it's this brilliant 2.5-minute Shakespeare's Sister style romp, which just works really, really well. And I just absolutely love it. And I'd put this as track 3 on the album, by the way. So I put Our Frank, Mute Witness, Pregnant for the Last Time, The Loop on there. And it's backed with 2 live songs recorded in Utrecht. So Morrissey went out on his first solo tour in 1991. He assembled a band, which I've mentioned previously. That band is Boz Bora on guitars, Alan White on guitars, Gary Day on bass, and Spencer Cobrin on drums. And they were and are, I think, a fabulous set of musicians that weren't given the respect that they deserved by Morrissey, or anybody else for that matter. And in fact, in this book, Morrissey is very keen on letting you know how much money they're being paid, which is £1,000 per show payroll, and it's not very good on being particularly charitable to them. They'd played together in rockabilly bands previously, never, I think, the 4 of them together, or they created a band and then Morrissey became the singer for that band, and then very, very quickly moved into touring in America. I think their 10th live show was in an arena to 11,000 people in America, and they were still using the same equipment that they'd been using when they were playing the Dublin Castle in Camden to 125 people, or to, the Dog and Duck pub in Walthamstow. And this book is particularly harsh on them, without necessarily giving them the credit for both rising to the occasion, working incredibly hard, becoming a cohesive band in a very short period of time with limited equipment, little investment, and then going and playing an arena tour as their 10th live show, less than 3 months after the decision was taken that they would be put together It's not very long to put together a band. And if you're going to be playing somewhere like, let's say, I don't know, the Universal Amphitheatre or the Costa Mesa Arena, and you're using the same equipment that you were using to play the Dublin Castle, which was all pulled together on a budget made out of paychecks while you were working for various councils and things, it's not a surprise you're going to sound a little bit scrappy and a little bit cheap, because that's exactly what you are. I think this book is really, really unfair to the lineup. Having seen and heard a number of live performances from this era, I think they did very, very well indeed, all things considered, and became my favourite Morrissey live lineup is the one with Boz and Alan in the band. There are a number of live releases that came out from this period. The touring started in Dublin on, I think, the 29th of April. The second live show was in Paris, which was released on this bootleg LP, Posing in Paris, which was broadcast on the radio. I think Dublin was the 27th of April. This was recorded on the 29th. So only the second live show. And listening to it, and you kind of go, it's scrappy. Sure, it's enthusiastic. Yes, it sounds rough and ready, but also sounds vibrant and lively by a band that very clearly have suddenly realised that they have this opportunity of a lifetime. They've grabbed it by the scruff of the throat and they've gone for it with all of that they've got, with enormous enthusiasm. And it sounds really good for a band's second show. Really, really good, especially considering the circumstances, and I could not criticise them for it at all. Obviously, over time, the equipment situation changed. Things sounded slicker and better as more money came into the equation, but you imagine suddenly propelling a band that had been playing to 125 people to playing to 10,000 people. There is going to be a gap to start off with. It's going to take a little while to get to the point where you think you might need them to be. And I think it's fair to say that at least three of them, Alan, Gary and Spencer, had been in a band called the Memphis Sinners, apparently, which hadn't experienced a huge amount of success. So they did already have that pre-existing musical chemistry that put things together. There was a second radio broadcast. This is another bootleg, Morrisseys Higher Education, which is recorded at Utrecht in Holland, one of my favourite places, on, I think, the 1st of May 1991. This has most of the show on it. It also has the two B-sides, which are on Pregnant for the Last Time, a cover of T-Rex's Cosmic Dancer, and Disappointed, taken from the B-side of Every Day is Like a Sunday. And you can really start to hear the band reaching for and becoming what they were going to be in future. Other shows were broadcast on the radio, so Dins, or however it's pronounced in Belgium, on the 30th, Cologne, Hamburg, Dallas was recorded and released as a sell-through VHS. Here is the DVD of it, which was shot with in-house security cameras. So it's, I think, a 3 or 2 camera shoot that cost $3,000, never intended for release. But Morrissey wanted to capture the excitement, the passion, the mozzomania of that first set of shows as he played America for the first time. This is a scrappy, rough VHS tape transferred to DVD. It's not amazing, but it captures the excitement and the passion of the show, and gives you a sense of exactly what it was like to be in the midst of that enormous storm of music. And I saw him on this tour, which I'll get to in a moment, by the way. But it was, none of the shows were filmed or recorded with the intention of ever being released as a live album. They were broadcast on radio, sure. They were shown on TV, a couple of them. But they were never, they were never designed to be the definitive Morrissey live document. It's a snapshot of a moment in time, as opposed to a multi-camera stadium shoot. And the tour went to America, it went back to the UK, and it went to the UK around about, I think, October 1991, which saw the release of the fourth and final single from this era, My Love Life. I love My Love Life. It is one of my favourite Morrissey songs, heavily influenced by New York Dolls Subway Train, heavily influential upon me. I think this is a fabulous song. That lyric about, I know you love one person, why can't you love two? Gorgeous, beautiful. I rate it highly. It's one of my favourite Morrissey solo songs of all time, My Love Life. I saw one of its last live performances, certainly the last one in the UK. And it's a kind of originally it was potentially a B-side to Pregnant for the Last Time. There was a concession to using guitars after not using guitars on the rest of the period, I think. It was contractually, there was a problem with it, in so much as some copies came in silver labels and not paper labels. Obviously, there would have been a letter from Morrissey's lawyer to EMI Records about that, giving him the reputation for being difficult to work with. But is this gorgeous, lovely, heartfelt ballad about how it's difficult sometimes to be in a relationship or find a relationship or maintain a relationship, and to be able to open up that, say, I know you love one person, but why can't you love two? And just such a lovely, lovely song. It really, really is. I love it to bits. If I was in a band and we were going to cover a Morrissey song, I'd probably go for My Love Life, actually. Firstly, because hardly anybody will remember it, and secondly, because I really, really like it. And it came out at a time, October 1991, when I was hoping that I could find somebody that could love not just one person, but two, which shortly after the release of this, I did. So it's a victory for me, I think I would have said, but I love that song. Always reminds me of my first proper adult relationship with a Welsh woman. Not my first proper relationship with a Welsh woman, but my first proper relationship with anybody was with a Welsh person, who, as far as I can tell, was and is a lovely human being, and it just soundtracked that kind of moment of my life, so quite important to me. B-side of this is I've Changed My Plea to Guilty, and I've Changed My Plea to Guilty was performed live on the Jonathan Ross show with Steve Naive on piano, written by Mark Nevin in 1990, and when it wasn't on the album, loads of Morrissey fans were like, where is it? Why isn't it on the album? When is it coming out? It's really bloody good. I certainly had a recording of it off the television that I then turned onto a tape so I could listen to it whenever I wanted. I've Changed My Plea to Guilty was played live by the Morrissey band on some of the early shows. It's on the Utrecht and the Paris shows here, in a slightly different, slightly blunter arrangement, because they didn't have a piano with them. I would put I've Changed My Plea to Guilty on my LP version of Kill Uncle, because it's better and it deserves it. It's beautiful, it's minimal. Morrissey sings phenomenally well. It's just such a great little song, and it has been played live recently. I saw Morrissey live for the first time, and I saw him live on the 8th of October 1991 at the De Montfort Hall. Here is the original bootleg tape I bought off the stall later on the next week with the recording. This was a phenomenal show, absolutely amazing. One of my favourite shows of all time. It was like suddenly, after 5 years of not playing live, Morrissey was in front of us. He was singing, he was real, he wasn't an abstract concept, and it was kind of like the nearest thing I had was like being in the presence of an indie Jesus. All these people who, obviously lots and lots of Morrissey fans, he sang to the perpetual adolescents, the disaffected, the outsiders with his lyrics, and we all felt that somehow if he touched us, he could cure us of our adolescent leprosy. Touch me, Morrissey, cure me. And it was phenomenal as an experience to be in the room when Klaus Nomi's Wayward Sisters would play, before he came on stage, before he appeared in front of our eyes, as much he does in Live in Dallas. And that sense of, there was almost like all the pheromones and the hormones and this sense of excitement and joy turned up in front of us, and then all of a sudden there he was, live in front of our very eyes, our very ears, singing songs that we'd previously only heard on records, a living, breathing human being right in front of our eyes. And this is pathetic, but hopefully it will make you laugh. This is a tiny bit of Morris's shirt from that show at the end of Disappointed, when he threw his shirt into the crowd and it was scattered to bits amongst the literally hundreds of people that were despondent and crying because it was the last UK show. I got this off somebody. So this is part of Morris's shirt. It's actually one of these shirts. But it's obviously the one that he was wearing and threw into the crowd during Disappointed during that particular show. It was a great show, great experience. In fact, I got up on stage, like lots of Morrissey fans. I chose my moment during November Spawned a Monster, and I leapt on stage And I suddenly was like, Christ, what do I do? I don't know. And so I kind of just walked up to him and kissed the back of his neck. And then somebody went, you're going to have to leave now. And I'm like, okay, don't throw me out. And it's like, only if you do it again. And then all of a sudden, I was pushed back into the crowd whilst November Spawn the Monster was playing. And somebody came up and hugged me and went, you touched him. And I was like, yes. And then that's where we are. So there is, of course, photographic evidence of this, of a sort. This book, Morrissey Shot by Linda Sterling, a photographic depiction of the Kill Uncle tour, features this photograph from the Leicester de Montfort Hall. And if you look very, very closely, you will see an outstretched hand here. Core baby, that's really me. That's my hand, reaching for Morrissey in my black and white polka dot shirt, which was not at all influenced by Robert Smith. Not at all. That was it. That was my first Morrissey gig. Wow, what an amazing experience that was. That really was quite something. The tour carried on, of course. I got myself a tour brochure. This photo here is of Harvey Keitel. It was originally intended to be the cover of the Smiths' final studio record, Strange Ways Here We Come, to which Harvey Keitel said, Smiths who? Never heard of them, bugger off, basically, or something along those lines. Later realised the error of his ways, and later became the backdrop that was used for the tour. So this is the tour programme, which I purchased at the time. Photograph of Edith Sitwell there, Frank the singer with the band themselves, and promotional releases and things like that. Tour programmes are mostly awful. They're mostly just photographs of people. Obviously this one, him standing in Albert Square with the band, that's quite fun. And then some other stuff. These photos here, of course. So this is a tour programme from Leicester from October 1991. I also bought, amongst other things, a postcard, Sacramento 1991. This is 50p. It probably would be more than that now. The two releases from this period, which I haven't yet touched upon. This is a really, really good one. This is the Morrissey at K-Rock EP. So this is Morrissey's live band doing a radio session for K-Rock Radio in America in late 1991, featuring new studio versions of There Is a Place in Hell for Me and My Friends, My Love Life and Sing Your Life. I really rate this. I really like it. Yes, the band speed up a little bit towards the end of My Love Life, but overall, it's a good solid EP with a nice set of alternate studio recordings of Morrissey's band in the first flushes of their existence. And then there is finally the Your Arsenal Definitive Master. So this is Morrissey's fourth solo LP, but on it is a DVD. The DVD is Morrissey and his band live at the Shoreline Amphitheatre on October the 31st, 1991, performing a show right at the tail end of the Kill Uncle tour. This was originally planned to be released as a VHS around about the same time as Live in Dallas, to effectively put two live concert films out. The label chose to do Live in Dallas. Artwork was fully prepared for Live at the Shoreline, but it wasn't released, so it was later used as reissue bait on the DVD of Your Arsenal. And with that, and no further ado, that brings an end to the Kill Uncle period. I will, however, say that if I was in charge, I would change the running order for Kill Uncle. And the running order I'd have is I'd have Our Frank first, I'd have Mute Witness second, Sing Your Life third, The Loop fourth, I've changed my plea to guilty 5, Asian Rut as 6, Turn the LP Over, Sing Your Life, no, Pregnant for the Last Time would have been track 3. So let's start again. Sorry, I've made a mistake. Our Frank, number 1, Mute Witness, number 2, Pregnant for the Last Time, number 3, The Loop, number 4. I've changed my plea to guilty at number 5, Asian Rut at number 6, Turn the LP Over, Sing Your Life as number 7, side 2, track 1, then Keep Driving Your Girlfriend Home, that bit where it ends on the lyric that says, you know, and we say, we're shaking hands goodnight so politely. You then follow it up with My Love Life, so it makes it pretty clear that there's a link between Driving Your Girlfriend Home and My Love Life. The end of the family line is track 4, and then There Is a Place in Hell for Me as My Friends as track 5. An 11-track LP, about 37 minutes. So you get rid of King Lear, you put that on a B-side. Harsh True for the Camera Eye, put that on a B-side. And Found, you put in a bin. And then you have a reconfigured version of the album that sounds much more realistic. That is Morrissey's Kill Uncle, his third solo album. And with the track listing which I've just given you, I think it works much, much better. That's the only version of it that I can properly digest and understand and agree with. The rest of it is, the LP as it is deeply, deeply flawed. It's not long enough. It's not substantial enough. It's Morrissey sounding like history and not the future for the first time, and being out of step with the rest of the world. But those live shows cemented his reputation. They salvaged a bad LP. They attached to that era a set of new memories, a set of a joyous celebration, a rebirth, which is going to follow through into the Your Arsenal album, and then show that as Chas Smash from or Chas Smith, I can't remember his name, from Madness says, you've lost it, but you'll get it back. And the next album, Your Arsenal, is absolutely where Morrissey gets it back, and he just wants to say he's never been away. He's right here where he always was. And Your Arsenal is the next one I'm going to be talking about. But in the meantime, happy 33rd birthday to Kill Uncle. It's a great LP in the revised version which I presented to you. The version which you can buy is not amazing. There was also, I can't believe I forgot this, a terrible reissue which adds East and West from 1989 and a song from 1992 and replaces There Is a Place in Hell with the K-Rock version. It's got a different cover. Don't buy it, okay? If you can buy any version, buy this version with this unamazing picture on. The picture on the front, of course, should be this picture. Is what it should be, but it isn't. So let's pretend that that's what it is, because this is what the LP should be. Okay, so thank you very much. Good night. Thank you. Stay beautiful, beautiful ones, and I will see you soon. Bye.